Ready? Play.
Welcome back to another episode of Painting Lines. Last week, we finished off the 2024 season with a year end finals recap. And this week, we'll be reflecting on the 2024 season with the second annual Painting Lines Award Show. So, Aidan, want to break down the format of today's episode just to kind of remind the listeners how we're going to do this?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, second annual. So we did it last year. Essentially, it's like we have some awards we're going to give out, like Player of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, stuff like that. And we each picked one individually. So that could mean that we both picked the same player, or it could mean we picked two different players. And then we're going to discuss why we chose that player, essentially.
Yeah. And I feel like you might guess around 75% of mine. But I feel like yours are so up in the air. Like I have probably a 20% chance.
Yeah, I mean, like there are some that I feel like are kind of obvious, but then there's other ones where like I feel like I try to throw in like a random guy to make it a little bit interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like a lot of these are just completely objective.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of objective, you want to jump into the first one, just player of the year?
Yeah, I think we can all agree it's center.
100%. That was like a no-brainer pretty much.
Yeah. All right. How about the most improved?
Uh Most improved. I'll kick us off here with this one. I went with Jack Draper.
Ooh,
So
okay.
last year he ended the year at number 61. This year gets all the way up to number 15. Obviously made the US Open semifinal, which was probably the highlight of his year, but also won two titles. And just that momentum going from outside the top 50 to within the top 20 is just such a massive jump for a guy that, like, it wasn't his first year on the scene, but like just massive strides to get to that point.
Yeah, that's a good one. That is a good one. I kind of took a different approach here because you know how you went outside top 50 to outside, or sorry, to in the top 20. I went with Fritz, who went from number 12 to number 4. And I think this just really solidified him as the top American. I mean, he had a great year, US Open finalist, ATP finals finalist. So I went with someone who, like, instead of making the big jump, made a more significant, like, career jump to be in the top five.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, like, if you really compare the two guys, I think there probably would be almost a bigger points jump for Fritz, or at least similar, right? Because to be in the top 20, you're probably within around like maybe 2,000 points or so. But to be in the top five, you need like 4,000. So he
Mhm.
like doubled his points total, probably a similar to what Draper did. It's just like a different comparison of level. One guy went from being near the top to being almost at the top, and the other guy kind of almost made a name for himself.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the level up. Like Draper should, I mean, hopefully get there one day. He's just a couple steps behind.
Exactly, exactly. How about a comeback player of the year? Who'd you go for in this one?
I went with Berrettini because I mean, pretty obvious here. He missed all of 2023 with various injuries and started out the season 2024 at 154 and moved all the way up to 35. He went 30 and 12, three titles. And I like to see this as a comeback because he was a former top 10 player and Wimbledon finalist. And to be, out for a whole year and then coming back, this was my guy. Plus, I just like tennis when he's around. I love
Yeah.
watching his game.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I went with the same guy, Berrettini.
Mm.
I feel like this was another kind of more obvious one. Like his first tournament back from 6 months of playing no tournaments was this year. He comes in and immediately starts playing pretty well. Like it was pretty early on in his comeback that he was able to win that tournament in Marrakesh. Then later in the year, he wins back-to-back titles in Stade and Kitzbühel. So really just an impressive jump to get back to where he is now.
Yeah, these were all clay titles, right?
Yeah, I think three
Ironically.
clay titles, which is ironic given the fact that his biggest result ever is obviously that Wimbledon final, which is grass.
Yeah, maybe we're seeing a little transition here.
Yeah, could be, could be. How about best server? Who'd you go for in this?
I went with Zverev, and this one was kind of just one of the most objective ones. I would say he had the most aces of the season, 797, and that's over 90 matches. And another stat that I just wanted to pop out here was he won 90% of his service games and had 70% total serve points won. And just the next few guys down the line would be Herkoch, Fritz, and Shelton. And they were around the same, but not quite there. So like maybe just under 90 or and at 70 or just under 70%.
Yeah, I also went with Zverev. I think, like you said, this was an objective one. I also noted that he won 90% of his service games. It's interesting because actually he wasn't the highest percentage in terms of service games won, because Sinner won like 91%. But I feel like that was one of those things where it was less about the fact of how good his serve was. It was just the level that Sinner was playing at meant that he won a higher percentage of all of his games, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then also, I just think that Zverev was a guy where his serve could keep him in matches. I talked about this a while ago, earlier, back when we were doing the recap of the Miami Open. He played this match against Dimitrov that Dimitrov actually ended up winning, but the match was only close because Zverev was serving so well. And I think that kind of is part of being good servers, that your serve can keep you in matches.
Yeah, I remember last year we talked about Herkoch. I'm pretty sure he won this award. And it was kind of the same deal. When he was serving, he was almost, impossible to break. And that just had that dominating effect in matches.
100%. 100%. Moving on to most entertaining, I would guess this was also one we agreed on. I went with Alcaraz here.
Oh, no, I kind of went with a dark horse. I went Tommy Paul.
Oh, Tommy Paul. Okay. So, because I went with Alcaraz because I feel like his game is just so explosive. And the fact that he mixes in the drop shot so effectively just makes it so that you get points where guys are forced to come up to the net, put in weird positions, and makes the points more kind of interesting to see the result. Why did you go with Tommy Paul here?
Yeah, so I want Tommy because he doesn't necessarily show that emotion on the court, but I feel like he's great at point construction. He hustles every single point. He doesn't take points off, and he plays with intensity. Like even just when he wins points, he'll have that like cold fist pump stare, and he's just I pretty much know I'm going to get an entertaining match whenever I watch him. He's someone that I'll make time to actually try to watch the match, and I know I'm going to get something special.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of almost has that Deminar type of vibe where it's like the fact that someone is willing to just stay and keep grinding out these points and get to these shots does add a lot of value to watching the match.
Yeah, and just like watching him set up the points too, because I feel like he has such great variability. Like he can play from the baseline, he can play at the net. He's extremely athletic. I think he had one of the shots of the year. Remember that like one-handed backhand or the lefty forehand?
Yeah.
Just crazy. Yeah, turning defense into offense.
Yeah, and the creativity to do some of the shots that he does is just incredible.
Plus, I just love watching his like training videos too on Instagram. Like you could see he really gets after it.
So even most entertaining, not even on the court as well.
Not even on, yeah, he's got a pretty interesting life too, social media wise. There we go. Yeah, it just says most entertaining player, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we could have just gone with like someone just doesn't even play.
Curious.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking. But yeah. How about most underrated player?
Ooh, who did you go with?
I went with Thomas Mahach.
Okay.
So Mahach, he's a top 25 guy in the world, but he's also a guy that I don't think even a lot of tennis fans really think about or even know who he is. But really, I'm picking him because he just recorded a lot of impressive wins this year. Just to name a few guys, he beat Dimitrov, Alcaraz, Tommy Paul twice, Rublev, and Djokovic. So these are all big name wins that he got this year. And I think it's one of those things where like you see Rublev lose to him and you're like, oh my God, he lost to this guy. Djokovic, oh my God, he lost to this guy. But it's in reality, Mahach is a very solid player and isn't rated that way, I feel like, by the media as much as he should be.
Okay, that's a really, really good one. I love that pick. I think that's so true. Everything you said. And the funny thing is, he didn't even cross my mind when I was picking this player. And he's also got the short shorts too, the Runa style shorts.
Exactly.
Little
Exactly. I mean, that just
but
adds so much to his rating, right?
it adds, yeah. Mine's not as much of a sleeper, but Musetti. Just because I feel like his name doesn't really carry that much weight on the tour. Like whenever I see it, it's not like a oh, Musetti type of thing. I feel like he's just not really feared by other players as much, even though he's been pretty impressive this year. He made the semis at Wimby. He won a bronze medal at the Olympics. He was the finalist in Chengdu, finalist in UMAG, and he secured some pretty big wins under his belt this year. He beat Shelton in Miami and then Fritz in Monte Carlo. And then not to mention he also just had a baby boy. So he's a father and he's doing all this.
Yeah. I mean, with Musetti, I mean, to say that players don't fear him, I think is maybe tough to say because we can't really be in like the players pre-match meetings where they discuss, okay, we got to really be worried about Musetti or something like that. But I agree that sometimes Musetti isn't talked about as maybe as much as he should be, especially with that Wimbledon run. Really an impressive job there. Yeah, I think he is a little bit underrated, but I also think he's maybe a guy where it's like people still know that he's out there. Like people know Musetti's the number 2 Italian player right now. So bigger name, but I do think that, yeah, he doesn't get talked about maybe as much as he should be.
I think that's a good point about him being the number 2 Italian. Just another thing where he's kind of overshadowed by someone.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
But all right. How about the other side, the most overrated player this year?
I mean, I wonder if you went with the same guy. I went with Tiafoe.
Oh, I did not. But
yeah, so Tiafoe is a guy that if you look at 11 out of 12 months of the year, he did not have a good year. Literally every single month, other than August, he had a win rate of below 50%. In August, he had a run to the final in Cincinnati and a semifinal run at the US Open. So really impressive in those 2 months, or in that 1 month, those 2 tournaments, I should say. But outside of that, pretty bad year. And those 2 tournaments just kind of just kept him in the top 20. But I think if you look at kind of the advertisement and stuff at like the US Open, they're treating him like he's the best American player, really. And I guess he didn't really underperform there. Like he performed perfectly for the amount of advertising they were doing, but it seems like a little bit of overhype based on how he performed for the rest of the year.
That's a really good one too. Damn. Mine was FAA. Just basically the same kind of reason because of his ranking. You know, he's 29, but he should be deep 50s, 60s. Just if it wasn't for that Monte Carlo lucky, crazy run.
Yeah, to me, I think I was thinking about FAA, but I don't know if I would say he's overrated. If I were gonna say, I would say he's maybe overranked because his ranking is higher than it should be, but it's not like people really consider him to be as good as he was maybe in 2022. People aren't talking about, oh, FAA is like one of the best, really the best guys. Whereas Tiafoe, they kind of talk about him like this guy's just the best American, maybe, when really he hasn't performed like it. Tiafoe, or FAA, we kind of do go hard against a lot of the time.
Yeah, definitely overranked. I like that phrase. All right, who do you think is the most likely to end up in the top 10 next year for the first time? Someone who hasn't been there before.
So this is a kind of repeat of one I did earlier, but I'm going with Draper again.
Hey.
He's just going to continue that momentum that he had from this year. He's currently number 15, and I just think it's just going to continue to build. And you're going to have some guys probably drop out of his way, I think. So I think that's going to be working in his favor.
Yeah, I went Draper as well. Do you have any honorable mentions, guys, that you were also thinking about?
I mean, if you look at someone like that did well at the end of this year, for example, like Humbert. Humbert did really well at the end of this year. That could mean that he could maybe peak in the top 10. I don't know though, because he did do really well at the beginning of last year too. So it's questionable whether he's going to break in there. That was really the one I was thinking about the most though, was Draper and then Humbert maybe.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to stretch it a bit, and I was also thinking of Humbert, Fils, and Mensik. I think Mensik.
Yeah, Mensik.
He's kind of
Pesci Pericard also.
Yeah. That's what I thought you were gonna go with best serve as like a subjective one.
Because with Pesci Pericard, he was playing like challengers until May of this year, like challengers in qualifying. And then his first tournament, like actually on the tour, he wins and then just continues to build from there. He's like number 30 something in the world. Just crazy to do that given the fact that at the beginning of the year, he wasn't even getting invited to tournaments.
Yeah, seriously. I think I'm just gonna start calling him was it GMP? That's his new nickname.
GMP. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean they all get every guy with like three names, you gotta give him the I don't know, initial name.
Yeah. Yeah, that's too much. All right. How about the most likely to drop out of the top 10 next year?
I went with Djokovic.
Yeah, me
I
too.
I think I mean like there's other guys like you look at Dimitrov, he's already at 10 and it's like yeah, he may drop out. Uh you look at Rude really didn't perform that great other than in the clay season. That could be an issue for him. But you look at Djokovic, I just don't know if he's going to be active enough to keep that
Mhm.
high of a ranking. Even if he does perform really well in the slams, because well, obviously we know like the slams are such a massive percentage of the points, but unless he like wins one or does really well at all of them, it's going to be tough to stay in the top 10 without having like supplemental tournaments.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And I thought this one was pretty interesting because I took this jab at Djokovic, not to say that he's not going to be in the top 10 because he's bad at tennis. It's just like you're not playing as much, so you're automatically going to be out of the top 10.
Pretty much. Pretty much. How about a biggest surprise of the year? What was something that like just shocked you?
For me, it was Popper winning the Canadian Masters.
100%.
What
100%.
about you?
Yeah, I went with US Open, just that crazy night, back-to-back nights, also featuring Popperin with Alcaraz and Djokovic both going out. Obviously, Djokovic was the winner last year. He hadn't had the best year this year, but still was the defending champion. Gets knocked out on one night right after Alcaraz gets knocked out by Boric van de Zandschulp. Just guys where it was like almost matches that didn't get watched because they were early rounds and it was just such heavy favorites for these guys. And then both of them out just super early.
Yeah, I know. Pretty unfortunate. I mean, I was at that the Alcaraz Van de Zandschulp match too, and I just never in my mind would I thought I would see Alcaraz lose. So that was
Yeah.
pretty shocking.
Happens. It happens. I mean, how many times did we see like Nadal get knocked out in like the second round at Wimbledon?
Yeah, yeah, and Alcaraz has shown that he's prone to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, Alcaraz definitely has more variance in his level than we saw from a guy like Sinner this year, who was just
Mm-hmm.
so dominant.
Yep.
And then let's get into some more of the fun ones. So, who do you think is the most likely to throw a fit on the court?
Oh, I went with Rublev just because you kind of have to like smashing his
Exactly.
face, smashing his leg, drawing blood on the court.
I said Rublev too, but I was like, Medvedev was really trying to sneak this title away from him at the end there with like
Yeah.
his antics at the year-end finals, throwing the racket around, just freaking out. But yeah, Rublev, he's just so consistently crazy on the court.
I know. And I think Tiafo kind of earned the honorable mention here with the like 10 F bombs in 30 seconds.
Yeah, just cussing out the ref.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. I don't know. I
Insane.
feel like this year we didn't see as many fits. I don't know.
Really?
Because I
Well, I
think
feel like we did because I mean, think about like FAA versus Draper. That was a pretty big one.
yeah, but that wasn't a fit, I guess. That was like pretty
So you think it's like
warranted.
if it's justified, it's not like throwing a fit
Well,
away? Because
yeah, but
I agree.
he
I
didn't
think
really throw a fit. He kind of handled it like really well. FAA,
yeah.
like very
I just meant
classy.
like kind of like a moment, like a moment on the court, I guess.
Yeah, I just think
It's not
yeah,
you. I agree. I don't think it was a fit because
yeah,
he was very calm about it.
yeah, no fits. And this is another thing. Djokovic, usually we see some good ones out of him. Like remember when he just obliterated the racket in the Wimbledon final on the net post? So we didn't really see that from him this year. I feel like Kyrgios wasn't active this year, so we didn't see any fits there. Zverev, same thing as Djokovic. He's kind of like prone to it, but he didn't really throw as many. Bublik. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking of guys that
Bublik
normally
just wasn't like in the
he
spotlight
was.
as much, I
Yeah,
feel like.
yeah, I know, I know. That was a fun one.
How about the most fun guy to like hang out with or like grab a beer with?
Oh, I'm going Dimitrov. I feel like
Dimitrov?
he's cool.
Yeah, I
He's
feel like he's just a very chill guy. I didn't really
mhm.
know when we picked this category who to go with. I decided to go with Alcaraz just because the dude's always got a smile on his face. Just seems like a fun
Dude,
guy to be around.
I just don't think you would be able to talk to him because of
That's
the
true.
language barrier.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the argument. So you could only pick guys that speak English. That's not fair.
Well, how are you going to communicate?
I don't know, just vibes, man.
Google Translate?
It's not just
Yeah,
vibes.
you
Just
will. You'll probably have a great time and not even have to say anything.
exactly.
All right. How
And
about the best rivalry?
yeah, so I another appearance from Alcaraz for me. Who do you think I went with Alcaraz?
Tsitsipas.
No, I went Alcaraz. I went Alcaraz and Zverev because
Okay.
they played in big tournaments. Obviously, they played in the French Open final. They played 4 times this year. Just high level of tennis whenever they played, and it was even. It was a 2-2 split. I went with this one because there were some other like matchups that happened a lot more often, but they were mainly one-sided based on what I was looking at.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I thought for sure you were going Tsitsipas Alcaraz. That's his biggest rival.
Yeah.
I actually went with a rivalry in the making. So they've only played once, but it is going to be so tense. It's Nicholas Jari and Sabuth Wild. So
Yeah, so
they played.
you thought I was gonna go with an off the wall one. This I think
Yeah,
this is the most off the wall pick we did.
this is the most off the wall one. And I wanted to kind of stump you. I wanted to dig deep here. And I just remember watching this match live and it being so chippy, probably the chippiest tennis match I've ever seen. And you had just two South American fan bases in Miami. It felt like a soccer game. It was literally probably the noisiest court there that night. And the match was tense too. The players were kind of not being as classy as one would normally be. The handshake was very brief at the end. I think Saboth Wild even like said some smart shit, and Jerry got into it with some of the fans, the Brazilian fans. So I think next time these two play, it is going to be great. And it is actually a pretty close skill level too.
Yeah,
Like the guys aren't that far apart from each other.
yeah. I mean, like there are just sometimes matches. I mean, best rivalry could have gotten with like what if you went with like Garin versus Borges? I'm sure
Yeah.
that's gonna be
Oh,
tense the next time they play.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to go Fritz Zverev, but I feel like I just kind of beat that one up. I've
Yeah,
talked about it twice in the last two episodes.
my issue with that one, well, I kind of would have gone after you a little bit if you had picked it because
Oh,
it was 4-1 for Fritz this year.
wow.
Yeah, so like
Wow.
I think maybe it's a even rivalry. Like overall, I think it's 7-5 overall.
Mhm.
But if we're talking about this year, it was pretty one sided.
Yeah. Not like, or just like Sinner Medvedev.
Yeah, exactly,
Is
exactly.
that even, yeah, is that even a rivalry?
It's hard to
Overall,
say.
career wise,
Yeah,
yes.
career wise, it is, but it's like it's hard to say. Oh, this is a rivalry this year because it's just been all Sinner pretty much. And yeah, then to wrap it up, let's just go with favorite moment of the year overall.
My favorite moment of the year was Rafa's last match at Roland Garros because I was there and it was the coolest thing ever. Like just the amount of energy when he walked in the stadium, every single point he played was to the max. And like obviously it's a big deal. He retired this year, actually a few days ago at Davis Cup. And this is just a monumental moment in tennis. And it happened this year. And I just so happened to be there. So that was my favorite moment of the year, even though it was sad. It was like a bittersweet feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bummer that it happened in the first round, just like that matchup with Zverev. But it was
Hmm.
also kind of like fitting. Like it feels like Zverev kind of got his moment because obviously he lost that match in the what was it the semifinal against Nadal a couple years ago with the massive injury, and
Hmm.
so he ended up getting kind of his win against him.
Yeah, great moment too. Also, just the fact that I can say I saw Rafa's last match at Roland Garros.
Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Pretty good.
All right. And how about your favorite moment of the year?
I'm gonna go with Djokovic winning the gold, the Olympics this year. I just felt like he didn't get that much this year. Obviously, no titles other than the Olympics, but it was nice for him to kind of wrap it all up. I feel like because it would have been a little bit, I don't know, unfulfilling if that's the right word, if Djokovic had won everything pretty much, but had no gold medal. because it would be like one thing that people could hold against him, even if there wasn't really an argument against him being like at least the most accomplished player of all time. People would be like, oh, but he didn't win a gold medal. I just was kind of happy that he got the last opportunity to do it, and he was able to perform.
Yeah, I was too. I think it was really special because he had been injured. He tore his meniscus, right? Like not even a month before. And that just that put his gold in jeopardy. And you never knew that he would be able to even compete for it. But he bounced back and he won it. And just seeing him collapse to the ground too, just pure emotion.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of funny when it was like, oh my God, is Djokovic going to be able to play? And then he like makes the final at Wimbledon. And you're like, okay, I guess he can still play.
Yeah, I know. Got spanked though.
Yeah. In the final, but still made it
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
So
He
like,
had a pretty easy draw. He had a pretty easy run, didn't he?
yeah, he played Musetti in the semis, and you're like, okay,
Uh,
well, not the toughest opponent to play in the semis.
yeah, exactly. So let's recap a bit. Which ones did we agree on
Um,
for definitely MVP? That was kind
yeah,
of
MVP was an obvious one we both agreed on. Most likely to
center.
throw a fit, we agreed on.
Yeah, server we did. Zverev.
Server we did.
I
Drop
thought
out of
you
the
were really
top
gonna
10.
throw.
Drop out of the top 10 we agreed on, and
Mhm.
first timer in the top 10 next year. Uh, and then we agreed on, I think that was it, and then comeback player.
Yeah. All right.
So yeah, a few agreements and a few different ones. So I think that was good.
Yeah, we want to know what you guys think too. I think we'll post this and you guys comment each superlative because I'm curious to see what other people think.
100%. 100%. But for now, you want to hop into segments?
Yeah, let's do it. Hey guys, before we jump in, we have some exciting news. We recently partnered with TruePro. They're a great place to buy strings, grips, and tennis apparel. Use discount code Painting Lines, that's one word, for 20% off store wide. You can find the link in our bio. What is new in tennis?
Well, I saw one of, I think, the best what's new tennises of the year. Most interesting news to come out. Murray being hired as Djokovic's coach is just the most insane thing to see. Feels like an April Fool's prank when you see it, but then you realize it's November. Uh, just crazy. And I just wonder what the dynamic's going to be because obviously they're like the same age, which is a weird thing. What's it going to be like? I guess that one part of it is that Djokovic doesn't really need a coach. So it's just almost like having a friend in the box that's going to give you some advice, I suppose. But I also think the benefit and why he's probably doing it is because when you look at someone who's such a great competitor like Murray, he's like, what did Murray learn from my game? What did he see in my game? Because obviously, when you're a player, when you're playing against a guy as much as these two guys did, there's things that Murray definitely saw in Djokovic's game that was like, okay, this is what I'm going to aim for to try and beat him. I'm not just going to go out there with no game plan. What do I need to do to go out and beat this guy? And then he can bring that to Djokovic to be like, hey, we need to work on this because this is what I would have tried to exploit to beat you.
Yeah, I'm also curious if Murray's doing this just so he can also get a peek into Djokovic's head too. Like it's just two goats kind of bouncing ideas off of each other.
100%. 100%. I think it'll just
Yeah.
be fun to see, though. I'm so excited to see Murray just sitting in Djokovic's box next year.
Yeah, yeah. This is kind of like a almost like a Tom Brady situation. Like if he were to go be a quarterback coach somewhere.
Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, I'm excited to see it too. And I'm pretty sure there were rumors when Djokovic was coachless over the summer that he was looking to hire Andy Murray's mom as like onto his staff. Yeah.
That's an interesting one. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be fun. How about you?
Yeah,
What'd
I
you go
know.
for?
I went with Italy winning the Davis Cup. They went back to back. They won it last year, and they were the first country to do it since Czech Republic in 2013. And who could you think of that was on that team?
I mean, obviously, like Burdich was like the number one guy, but other than that, I can't think of who the number two guy must have been. Obviously, was a lot younger back then, so I'm gonna cut myself some slack. But yeah, other than Burdich, who was probably in the top five, top 10 at that point, I don't know who the number two guy would have been.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. But Sinner sealed it. Just ended the year with a great Davis Cup win. And I heard a crazy stat. So he won his last 14 matches of the season, and during that streak only dropped one set.
That's pretty wild.
Just dominance, completely
Yeah.
dominant. And then another highlight is Berrettini got it done against Bodek van de Zandschloop. So he got the first win, and then Sinner got the second, and they beat the Netherlands 2-0.
Yeah, pretty impressive. I also saw a stat from Sinner that he was the first guy, I think, since like Federer in, don't remember what year it was, but to go the full year without losing in straight sets.
Whoa, interesting. Another Sinner stat, he had the most wins in a season since Andy Murray in 2016.
Pretty wild. I mean, it kind of goes to show how good Murray's season was in 2016 as well, though.
Yeah, I know. Jeez.
Yeah. So that wraps up what's new. And obviously, we're not going to do a bet of the week this week again, just because don't really want to bet on a challenger where we don't really know anything about him. And yeah, so how about instead of match of the week, let's wrap it up with a nice little match of the year. So where did you go for match of the year here?
Let's do it. So I went Alcaraz Sinner Beijing final.
Okay, yeah.
I'm worried you might have chosen it too. No?
I did not.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this was a great one. And I actually had an honorable mention too. I had Dan Evans and Hachinov as the longest US Open match ever.
Yeah, neither one of those were on my my list here, but
okay, what did you go with?
I went with one that was pretty early in the year, but the Australian Open final. Just because if you look at it, wasn't the result I really want. I wanted Medvedev to win that match. But it was a pretty impressive match when you have a guy that has never played in a Grand Slam final, but he's coming into his own as a player, comes into this match, loses the first two sets, and is able to stay composed enough to come back against a guy that has won a Grand Slam before and win 3 straight sets and close it out to win his first Grand Slam.
Yeah. And that was a big foreshadow of what was to come whenever
100%.
Medvedev would see Sinner.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of saw the foreshadowing going into that match. It was honestly a perfect storm in terms of a setup for Sinner to win his first Grand Slam final, I think, because he was playing excellent. I mean, he beat Djokovic in the semifinal in an impressive fashion. But for Medvedev, I think, played 2 really tough 5-step matches going into this final. And so just the longer that match dragged on, it was just, you could see Sinner almost gaining strength while Medvedev was just sapped.
Yeah. Wasn't that the longest amount of time someone spent on court at the
Something
Australian
like
Open?
that, yeah.
Yeah, I know that. Well, back to mine, that Beijing final, I feel like was just another foreshadow of what we're hoping to see in the future. A nice Alcaraz Sinner rivalry there. And then the Dan Evans Hachinov match, that just, I feel like that embodies Dan Evans, like completely just gritty workhorse, scrappy player, and not a flashy dude, but he just gets the job done. I feel like he goes to work, he brings his lunch pail, he does his job.
Yeah.
Like he wears ankle socks for crying out loud. He does not care what he looks like or what happens. He's going in.
Yeah. I want to see what happens with this Alcaraz and Sinner rivalry, because obviously Sinner's been playing at such a ridiculous level, and yet he can't get through Alcaraz. I wonder if it's just a mental thing. Obviously, he beat him in the Six Kings Slam, but that's not a tour event.
Yeah, I know. And I wonder how many of these Sinner results would have been different too if he was meeting Alcaraz in these finals.
100%.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.